Thank you. Well, thank you for allowing my wife Judy and me and my trustees Suzanne Farber and Peter Boyer, whom I can't quite see through the lights, and our former trustee Peter Schwartz to share this auspicious occasion with all of you. Whatever I'm able to accomplish in life will be a very small down payment on the lifelong debt I owe to Asia, partly for the treasures of its philosophy as a follower of the Tao and Buddhism and admirer of many Confucian tenets. It's helped shape my aesthetic sensibility through the elegant frugality of its literature, music, and visual arts. And also, I think the way I design, I get partly from the Asian approach, where actually technology is treated, for example, in Japan, first of all, as an art form, to be judged first on aesthetic criteria before mere functionality. And though not only has Asia had this profound influence on my personal development and outlook and approach to design, but Asia is also becoming the world leader in solving global energy and climate problems. And I'd like to say a little about that energy revolution that's gathering speed. And it's driven by exactly the same things as the reinventing firework Lynn mentioned, where in the US case we showed how to triple energy efficiency and go to 3/4 renewable supply by 2050, $5 trillion cheaper than business as usual, counting all externalities at zero, requiring no new inventions and no act of Congress, the transition led by business for profit. Now, every country has different ways of doing things, and in the case of China, we think our work with our 3 partner organizations will help to inform the 13th five-year plan, much as our work on energy efficiency in the book Natural Capitalism helped influence the 11th five-year plan to adopt energy efficiency as the top strategic priority for national development. But at a time now when half the world's new electric generating capacity every year since '08 has been renewable, and the modern renewables are getting $250 billion private investment every year, Asia is emerging as the unquestioned leader in much of that work. And I want to give you a little vignette of how that's playing out in the world's second and third biggest economies. My first headline is that Japan awakens. Japan, of course, had world-leading efficiency gains in the 70s after the first oil shock, but then the energy kaizen stagnated. Japanese industry remains probably the most efficient among 11 major industrial nations, but Japan now ranks 10th among them in industrial cogeneration and commercial building efficiency, 8th in truck efficiency, and it ties with the United States for next to last in car efficiency. So when you combine those efficiency opportunities with high energy prices, it's an unbeatable business proposition. And as the debate after the Fukushima disaster stirs a profound national conversation, Japan's starting to realize it does have not only this efficiency potential, but the ability to develop the world's richest renewable energy portfolio of any major industrial country. Japan has, for example, 9 times the high-grade renewable energy flows per hectare of Germany, but it has only 1/9 of the share of renewables in electric production that Germany has achieved, simply because Germany has competitive markets and Japan has monopsoniistic utilities that don't like competition. And that is starting to change, slowly but surely. With the new feed-in tariff suddenly things are taking off in Japan. They've tripled their solar power installations last year. They'll double or triple them again this year, making Japan the #2 solar market in the world. This is getting to be a very exciting place, and it's mirrored by a shift within the Japanese business community, which traditionally backed the traditional incumbent utilities. But the initiative of Masayoshi Son, the head of SoftBank, is now joined by many others. He's supported by 34 provincial governors, last I looked. Hiroshi Makitani, the billionaire founder of the e-commerce giant Rakuten, just left Kadenren to form a reformist rival group. So slowly, in the subtle, complex, subterranean way that things change in Japan, a new consensus forms. I think the business leader's center of gravity is moving very much toward the new energy future. And once Japan really forms a new consensus and heads off cheerfully in the new direction, there's nobody faster to take things to scale, except China. The world is #1 energy user in carbon emission, but also the world leader in 5 renewable technologies, aiming to be in all of them. Just to give an example, China has roughly doubled its wind power each of the past 5 years. Last year, they put in 1/3 of all the new wind power in the world. Their wind electric output surpassed their nuclear electric output. They have the most aggressive program in the world there, too. And then in solar cells, they own most of the world's production capacity, and they're planning to put in a total of 40 gigawatts just over the next 2 years to soak up the surplus that has made solar a market winner in much of the world. Then there are vigorous industrial and appliance and building efficiency efforts. China is the only country in the world that cut its energy intensity over 5% a year for a quarter century. They fell off the rails for a while. They've now nearly regained that pace and could accelerate it further. Now, of course, they're still roughly 2/3 coal-fueled, almost 4/5 on their electricity. But coal's star is dimming. 2/3 of the coal-fired power plants built from 2006 to 10 were bootleg plants not authorized by Beijing. So they've stopped doing that. They cut the coal plant orders in half. In 2011, the investment in coal plants fell by another quarter. And that year, their top 5 power companies lost $2.5 billion on coal-fired generation. Now, of course, there's a huge emphasis on cleaning up the air, which the top officials also have to breathe. They're using very creative policies. It's not, of course, just about coal, also about transport. So in Shanghai, when I was last there in February, you would pay more for the right to have a license plate for your new car than a small car would cost you to buy. It's a Singapore system. Now, last November, the 18th Party Congress, for the first time, headlined a revolution in energy production and use. That's pretty strong language for a party founded in revolution. And the incoming leaders clearly intend to fix what President Hu called an unbalanced, uncoordinated, and unsustainable development pattern, and to get off coal faster. And meanwhile, what about the country that, together with China, is responsible for 3/4 of the world's planned coal-fired power plants and 90% of the projected growth in global coal demand, and the plans implausibly to build a coal-fired power plant fleet twice as big as ours? It ain't going to happen, by the way. And that will ultimately surpass China in population, even though 1/4 of its people still lack electricity. I'm talking, of course, about India. Their power generation, too, is still mainly coal-fired, but their coal, though abundant, is not cheap. And they have huge logistical problems in mining and delivering the coal. So they're very dependent on imports, as is, by the way, China, which became a net coal importer in 2009. So the 6 countries that control 4/5 of the global coal market looked at this situation and said, hey, we got market power. Any one of us can move the market. Let's just double or triple the price. move it toward oil. So they did. So then coal prices, 2 or 3 times what had been assumed, imposed a cost-price squeeze on some giant power plants. Many plants in India cannot get enough coal, so that exacerbates electricity shortages, but the government doesn't want to raise electricity prices. So the dominoes have been falling very rapidly. In the 13 months through last December, the Infrastructure Development Finance Company stopped financing new coal plants. The Reserve Bank of India said it would not help banks that got in trouble on new coal plant loans. Financing dried up. Tata announced a shift from coal to renewables. And in the last 3 quarters of last year, 42 billion watts of coal plants got canceled. That is over 2/3 of the government's short-term target. So with power hampered growth threatened by even scarcer or costlier power, some of India's electricity leaders are now seeing their way forward in super efficiency, distributed renewables, and microgrids. And that's not only in rural areas. The tipping point is coming right at us in India. And as in China, a lot of what's behind that is vibrant private sector entrepreneurship in renewables that I think will, as in China, be able to far outpace the state-owned industries that dominate coal and nuclear power. India is the world's #3 wind power market. They already have installed nearly 4 times more wind than nuclear capacity. They added 1 billion watts of solar last year. That's taking off briskly. And of course, huge efficiency opportunities everywhere you look, especially because they're still building even more of their infrastructure than China is, and it's a lot easier to build things right than to fix them later. So Infosys, for example, has been putting up new offices 70% more efficient than the previous ones, and other industrialists are coming from all over India to say, how do you do that? I want to do that. By the way, it costs less to build. And there's a constellation of new civil society and government and business allies starting to focus on India's policy reform, stimulated, of course, by the blackouts last summer that blacked out 600 million people, which I think is a world record. So India, too, is starting to realize its massive efficiency and renewable potential and to figure out the regulatory and cultural changes that can help this work. And the main missing elements, as in China, as in Japan, include rewarding utilities for cutting your bill, not for selling you more energy, and allowing demand-side solutions to bid in the same markets, the same auctions as supply side. Now, of course, there are still major challenges in modernizing a sprawling, disjointed sector that has irregular management quality and transparency. But there are so many brilliant entrepreneurs and engineers. There are so many important advances emerging from the bottom up at the company and municipal and state levels, whether they're led or followed by national policy, that I think this is the most exciting time I can remember in several decades of working across Asia. And my colleagues and I look forward very much to helping speed these transitions for Asia and for the world. As energy reform in America, the #1 economy, starts slipping behind the #2, 3, and 4 economies of China, Japan, and Germany, the opportunity grows for collaboration to speed mutual learning and application of the modern efficiency and renewables revolution that we synthesized for the U.S. in Reinventing Fire, soon to be published in China. We just need a great title if you have ideas about that. And I'm sure that the Asia Society and many of you and your wonderful networks are going to help lead this shift to put the energy and climate problems behind us once and for all. So I want to thank you for your recognition of our team's efforts and for all of your fine work. Thank you.